Late Show host David Letterman offering up his second mea culpa for his joke about Sarah Palin's daughter, which we're not going to repeat for you, but a lot of people say it was unacceptable. Letterman apologized. Here was Palin's response to what she called a, quote, lukewarm apology. Laughter incited by sexually perverted comments made by a 62-year-old male celebrity aimed at a 14-year-old girl is not only disgusting, but it reminds us some Hollywood, New York entertainers have a long way to go in understanding what the rest of America understands, that acceptance of inappropriate sexual comments about an underage girl who could be anyone's daughter contributes to the atrociously high rate of sexual exploitation of minors by older men who use and abuse others. The controversy raged on, so much so that a protest is now planned today outside the Ed Sullivan Theater, where the show is taped every afternoon, despite Letterman's second apology. Listen.
I would like to apologize, especially to the two daughters involved, Bristol and Willow, and also to the governor and her family and everybody else who was outraged by the joke. I'm sorry about it, and I'll try to do better in the future. Thank you very much.
So let's bring in Sean Hannity, the host of Hannity. And Sean, Sarah Palin said she's forgiven him. Should he still be fired?
Well, I'm not calling for anybody to be fired, but I will tell you this. If you're asking me if I felt it was sincere or Dave was forced and dragged kicking and screaming into it, you know, the idea to me, Trace, that I just happened to hear this on PBS and Mark Shields, and it was only that it took that for him to recognize that there might be something out of bounds here. And the idea, well, first of all, it was the 14-year-old girl, not the 18-year-old girl that was at the ball game, but even so.
Well, Letterman says it was the 18, says he did not intend this to be targeted at the 14-year-old daughter.
Look, you know what, I'm not going to call him a liar, but it was the 14-year-old at the game. Look, I don't want, this is very important. I make my living with freedom of speech. I'm not calling for David Letterman to be fired. I think he was dragged kicking and screaming because of the public outcry. If the governor is going to accept his apology, then this is probably going to be the end of this whole thing. But I will tell you this, is that there is a whole industry out there, Trace, that literally is monitoring every single conservative on the radio, on television, and they're looking for one word, one phrase, one sentence that they think crosses a line. And I don't want to hear lectures from liberals anymore anytime conservatives say controversial things. They sat back there. Perez Hilton referred to Carrie Prejean, Miss California, as a dumb B word, and we hardly heard a word of people on the left coming to her defense.
You're saying had a late-night comedian who you thought was conservative had attacked the Obama girls, there'd be a different outcome.
Well, imagine, I doubt he would say I doubt he'd refer to, you know, Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, or any female Democrat as a slutty, having a slutty flight attendant look, and he didn't apologize for that. So, you know, Governor Palin, I think, is moving on here, you know, to her credit. But with that said, if I went on the air today and I referred to any Democratic woman having a slutty flight attendant look, what do you think the reaction would be?
I can tell you, Sean, it would be total outrage, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time.
And how many people would demand I be fired? And I wouldn't have a week to come up with my apology or my excuse.
So, you know, one of the questions that I have is, where is CBS in all this? You know, we live in a world now where, you know, a corporation like that doesn't step up right away. It takes a lot of public outcry for them to sort of come to the fore and say, well, Dave, you know, I guess you really better apologize here. Yeah, well, the fact that it took a full week for this thing to develop and, you know, it's something that he could have dismissed quickly. I'll give you an example. We followed and we covered the Imus story a lot. And I think there was one really distinct difference here, and that is that Imus apologized the next day. Right. Imus was sincere. Imus apologized again and again, and then he went on Sharpton's program. And then still people demanded that he be fired. And then after that, even when he was fired, he went and he apologized to the girls on the Rutgers basketball team personally, when he had nothing seemingly to gain from doing that.
Is there an argument, Sean, that maybe that Imus's comment, dumb as it was off the cuff, and that Letterman's comment was scripted by writers, and they go over these things again and again? I mean, these things are honed to perfection before he goes out on stage.
I think that's a great point. I mean, it not only was scripted, but the show was taped, and for whatever reason, they didn't seem to think this crosses any line. Look, I'm going to tell you, there is a distinct double standard here, and I'll use these three examples. Governor Palin having a slutty flight attendant look, attacking her young daughters. Carrie Prejean called the dumb B word and worse by Perez Hilton. You know, this Playboy list of conservative women with the hate blank list that came up. And we see very little outrage when conservative women are attacked in the public. And I think there is a distinction, and I think there's a double standard. You know, either this language is acceptable or it's not. If Sean Hannity or Rush Limbaugh or Mark Levin or any nationally syndicated radio host says one thing that is deemed politically incorrect, you've got a whole group of people out there targeting their advertisers, trying to get them off the air, writing to their bosses, and it's become a cottage industry of the left. But their hypocrisy in cases like this, if it's a conservative woman, they don't seem to care.
Yeah.
And I think so that means it's really selective moral outrage more than anything else.
Sean, you know, I've heard it suggested that maybe he did this to sort of get his name, you know, out there to be the story for a few days while Conan O'Brien is warming up his act and doing pretty well at it. Do you give any credence to that theory?
Yeah, I think that's always a possibility. Look, there are people, Martha, in our business, you know, that will do anything for publicity. You know, would I say that's beyond the pale? Look, I don't know what's in Dave's heart. I will say this. Unfortunately, I used to be a pretty big fan of David Letterman, and I don't know what's happened. And I think this is ultimately going to hurt his relationship with his audience as he has decidedly become more and more liberal left-wing in his ideology and his viewpoints, and kind of mean-spirited in these attacks. You know, I think one of the reasons that Leno clobbered him so badly is because of this. I think Jay Leno went out there because he was an entertainer, wanted to make people laugh, didn't have a political agenda, and was genuinely funny. And unfortunately for Dave, you know, his ideology, I think, is literally on display almost every night, and I think he's alienating a big portion of his audience by doing it. And I don't think in the end it helps him. It might be a short-term benefit, but I don't think there's a long-term audience build here.
Sean, before I let you go, do you think Sarah Palin, you know, should accept an invitation? Should she go on Letterman's show and you know, sort of show him what she's made of?
I would never. Why would she give him the benefit? If I was Governor Palin, I'd go on with Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Sean Hannity.
Sean, thank you.
Great to have you.
All right, guys.
Thank
Good
you,
to talk
sir.
to you.
Take care.